Hello, listeners. This is the final WhatsApp update from me on Posh Outdoors. I just wanted to close the loop by saying that we opened for bookings for our first 5 mirror cabins at Skyridge Glamping on Tuesday last week, and it was a resounding success. We did around 342,000 Canadian dollars of booking receipts in the first 24 hours, and that's around 245,000 US dollars in total. So there's a whole lot of work to do from this point on. Posh Outdoors was never going to be a one location deal, and I'm sure we'll be sharing updates on what we're doing in due course. But it's a pretty good start. A pretty I feel very good after as you all know, a lot of hard work, not just over the last few weeks, but over the last few years. So delighted to share that journey with you all. There's a lot more to come, but that will be it for the kind of posh updates for the next few weeks. And I hope you enjoy today's episode. Thank you. Bye bye.
Hello, friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Unique Hospitality Podcast. This is your host, Connor Schwab. Got an exciting episode coming up for you today. We'll be joined by Bill Nolan and Joe Lisa, the two founders of Soulstay, an exciting on-water glamping project in Sandusky, Ohio, on Lake Erie. It also includes some exciting amenities like a floating sauna and several new floating cabins, which is one of the first projects we've seen with this concept. So I think you're really going to like it. Some other housekeeping about the podcast. Nick and I are putting a ton of effort into continuing to improve this for you, our listeners. Some of the things is really getting to the good content, focusing on asking good questions, removing fluff, but still trying to keep the humor in it. Continue to get better and better guests with deep insights for you, the entrepreneur and the listener. And let's see, we have a few ad read slots left. If you or anyone you know is interested in purchasing ad read slots within the podcast, we want to be bringing content and service from folks who are in this industry and relevant to you guys. So we prefer to help folks in the industry. So if you're interested, reach out to us. And also, you might have noticed we got a new jingle, which I'm pumped about. I was not a fan of our old one. Don't know how you guys liked it, but I couldn't stand it. So we have a new jingle, and actually it's created by my childhood best friend since I've known since I was 5. His name's Lane Mueller, and his artist name is Candy Cigarettes. Super talented artist. He did this favor for us. So if you want to check him out, his website is candycigs.com. And if you have interest in his music, you can follow him and you can reach out to him for pretty much any musical needs. He's a bit of a genius when it comes to that type of stuff. So thanks, Lane. Appreciate the help. And then we're also working with Double Take Media, who's been helping out with our social media. If you're interested in using them in the future, you can go to their website for doubletake.media. And of course, this episode's also sponsored by Sage Outdoor Advisory, the industry leader in feasibility studies and appraisals. So I think that's all for today. And a big shout out to Nick. He's not on this episode, but I know he just had an incredible last week of his fundraiser. I'm sure he's excited to share the good news at some point and stop asking people for money. So congrats, Nick. And thanks, everybody. Enjoy the show. All right, Joe and Bill, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for both of you taking the time to come on. As I was doing my research for this episode, it got me really excited because Sage had a chance to do the feasibility study for Soulstay. I think was it a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years?
About a year and a half ago.
Okay. And it was a super cool project. It was our first project that was using floating cabins, or the hospitality experience was literally on water. So Joe and Bill, they founded and created Soulstay, which is a unique hospitality property on Lake Erie in Sandusky, Ohio. Includes floating cabins, some with bathrooms, some without, and then it also has normal, more standard cottages on land. They have some super cool amenities, including a rooftop hot tub, some local or well-known artist murals, and equipment rentals like subs and kayaks, and my absolute favorite, which is a floating sauna. And since you guys it's been open and operating for how long?
This is our third year now, so this is season 3 starting now.
Okay, awesome. So wrapping up season 2, starting season 3. Amazing. So you guys have 28,000 followers on your Instagram, and I just checked on your Google reviews, and you have 100 Google reviews, averaging 4.7 stars, with a bunch of awesome feedback, especially about your guys' amenities and how cool the cabins are. So yeah, well, let's jump right in. I can't even wait. So just tell me about the floating sauna, guys. Everything. I want to know everything.
Yes, so I mean, Connor, you kind of were the inspiration behind the floating sauna. We obviously talked before a little bit about like wanting to have a sauna at the property, and then when we had you guys bring up that during the feasibility study and everything, we were like, well, we're building houseboats, or we're having everything on the water. We should have the sauna on the water too. That's awesome. Like, let's do that. And we built it and brought it to life on the water, and it has probably one of the best views of the property right at the end of the dock, with the perfect view directly out on the bay, big window, and you just walk right in, and it's got the benches and everything, and people love it.
Wow. I assume you guys have used it, right?
Oh yeah.
All right, cool. How many people does it seat, and is it electric or is it wood fired?
It's electric. Just being that the dock has electric power, it made it a lot easier to do that. Um, and the seating capacity is 6 on the inside. If you really wanted to, I mean, you could probably put 10 people in there, but try to keep it closer to 6.
Yeah, yeah. It's that could probably be a fun, sweaty sardines box with.
Oh yeah.
I'm sure some guests have tried. Uh, so is this? Did you guys, build this from scratch? Did you order a sauna and put it on the dock, or is it on its own flotation device and connected? Like, how did you make this thing?
Yeah, so we started with like a pontoon base as like the barge essentially, so that it would float. And then using some kind of like uh, Bill had kind of some cool ideas with like more Nordic style looking options that other locations had done that we'd seen. I don't think any of them were in the U.S., but they were, in different countries. And we're like, well, let's kind of combine those different styles and also kind of make it feel similar to our tiny houses and have it so that it's kind of unique flow across the property. And we built it from scratch.
Oh man, you built it. That's even better. Super cool. So what's the guest experience been, or what's the guest feedback been? How's the feedback?
People love it. I mean, it's just one of those things that, especially around Ohio, in northern Ohio, where we're at, there really aren't a ton of, I would say, unique stays in the first place, let alone
Hmm.
places that have something as unique as a floating sauna. So we definitely get a lot of people that actually want to just come and experience our amenities. And the sauna is definitely the checkbox that a lot of people are really excited about, and they're always asking like, "Hey, where's the sauna at?" And we show them on the map, how to get out there. So.
So is the sauna free to guests? Is it you pay to use it, or like how do you guys manage the operations and usage on that?
So it's free to the guests, and because it is electric, it has like a auto timer on it, so they turn the timer on the dial to their desired time that they're going to be in there. It heats up, and then they enjoy it, and then afterwards they, if they leave before the timer is up, it just times out on its own. And but it's kind of like a self use thing. But sometimes we do have guests that just want a little intro. They've never maybe used a sauna before, or aren't familiar with how to operate it, and we give them a quick intro on how to use it. But it's included in their stay.
Wow. Is there any like signups, or is it just, hey, if it's open, go in. If it's not, wait your turn?
Right now, it's kind of first come, first serve. Um, we may, if it becomes something where it's like a lot of people are using it at the same time, we may end up getting to more of a sign up stage. But right now, the first come, first serve works really, really well. Being that it's at the end of the dock, so a lot of times people will see, okay, there's people on it right now, and we'll wait till someone else is off, and then we'll go and we'll use it for a little while. I mean, most people aren't hanging out in the sauna for 3 hours at a time, so it has it's a good 15, 20 minute or so that people are in there and then they're heading out. So
And the other thing that works out is that the sauna's popularity is probably highest during our shoulder seasons, during the spring and the fall. In the summer, it's pretty warm, so
yeah,
people are happy being outside and are probably looking more to be in their air-conditioned unit than in a sauna. So it tends to work out well, and we don't tend to have a line forming or a lot of people waiting.
That makes
for
sense.
sure.
How long has the sauna been open and operational?
So we've only had it open for one season so far. This is our second season with it. After we got done with the feasibility study with you guys, that was one of the first things we kind of got to work on, was figuring out how to get
I'm
that going. So
so honored and humbled that you actually listen to a crazy kook like me.
hey, you did say that if we built the sauna, you were going to come out and visit. So you have to put up your end of the bargain
You did say that.
I,
We're going to hold you to it, Connor.
I remember saying that, and now I need to look at my calendar. I'm in, and I have a good friend in Columbus, Ohio, and if I went and visited her, she would be stoked. So let's see. Oh wow, we got to make that happen. Very cool. Well, yeah, I'm honored, and and then one of the things you did that I like is that you put it in the prime real estate. So at least it sounds like you said you put it where it has the best views. It's the easiest to access. And I think oftentimes people want to put a honeymoon suite, on the best hilltop or in the best nook. And that's fine, but depending on how many units you have on the property, like it is nice that all the guests on the property can access at least for a little bit like that best view. So it's not just taken by one guest who's paying a small premium, but everyone gets to enjoy in that, peak amenity. So I like your guys' choice there. Is I guess if you had to do an ROI analysis on it in your head, like do you think that it's paid off in terms of what you spent to build it and the benefit it might add for guest experience or rates?
for sure. I mean, it's hard to get an exact calculation on something like that, but just from the shoulder season traffic, especially when it's colder out, um, being that there's really not anyone else around the area that has a sauna, it puts us right at the top of the list especially when that's something that people check as a checkbox. So it's definitely paid for itself, and I'm sure it's going to continue to keep paying for itself.
Have you had any like press release or like news outlets come and want to chat with you guys? And was that like the hook, or like has that driven any social media attention or news attention, press release, anything like that?
I would say the floating houseboats, that like the floating tiny homes, that whole experience as a whole has been really the draw, and then the sauna is like a really cool amenity that they want to feature in the article or in their video when they're out at the property. Even like the influencers that come out, that's always something that they want to make sure that they get in their experience while they're there. So.
Perfect. And what would you say is in addition, of course, the sauna, but what is special about your guys' property or the guest experience that sets it apart from other, hotels or other unique stay properties?
So we're a little biased, but but I would say everything. But go ahead, Bill.
Well, I think, number one, the floating homes are pretty a pretty cool draw, and there aren't many places that you can go and stay on the water. And what we've tried to do is really incorporate the water into every part of your stay, right? So we have a boardwalk that you can sit out on and overlook the water. We've got it's a we're still a working marina with all kinds of recreational watercrafts. So there are people coming in and out in their boats. We've got kayaks and stand-up paddle boards, and we do a whole host of other things that we'll get into later on. But I think this notion of glamping on the water and really bringing the water, incorporating the water into the guest experience is really unique. And then I'd say the other really unique element of it is, it's not a property that you have to drive an hour and a half to necessarily. There's a community of people around 200, 300,000 people that are there that are in a that are stone's throw away from us. Sandusky, downtown Sandusky is about a mile from our property. So to some extent, we've created an urban glamping experience, which is a way to bring the outdoor glamping experience to our guests without putting them in a car and telling them to drive a long while.
I love it. I love it. Joe, anything you want to add?
I mean, he hit it on the nail on the head. I mean, every space that we've created has kind of a community feel to it in a way, that's not like their individual unit. And in their individual unit, people get the ability to disconnect and unplug in our property. But in all of our, I guess you could call it our community area, people are able to connect, and that's what it's all about. Being outside, connecting, enjoying the water, enjoying the boardwalk. We have 8 different fire pits across the property that people just can relax by the fire, look up at the stars, and just sip on a nice adult beverage and relax.
Oh, God, you're selling it. I didn't seven. So there's 7 communal fire pits throughout the property.
There's 8. Yeah, there's
There's
8.
8. Wow.
8,
Okay.
yeah.
And it's relatively small, right? How many acres is it again?
We're about an acre total.
Wow.
So the boardwalk itself is about 80 foot long, and they're in multiple sections across the boardwalk. In like, I guess you could call a couple of them like couples fire pits, and then there's more that are community fire pits. So they're separated so you can have both experiences.
Wow. Very cool. And what would you say is the why behind creating Soul Stay, or the motivation behind it?
I mean, we all kind of love the outdoors, and I think that kind of is what helped us all connect in the first place. I kind of had a crazy idea of let's you know make this marina into this houseboat micro resort in a way, and they all kind of resonated with the hey, let's we love the water, we love being outside, we love the atmosphere that you can have with nature, and that kind of is really like the why that pushed it all to kind of come together.
Very cool. And all right. Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate that insight. And tell me a little bit more about your guys' backgrounds and how you ended up getting into outdoor hospitality or unique hospitality.
So when I was in college, I bought my first vacation rental property up in Erie, Michigan, just outside. I went to Bowling Green State University. Go Falcons! But we bought this property, and it had a little cottage, or it had a little shed across the street from it, and the property is on a peninsula, so both sides of the property were on the water, and the shed was just wasted space, and that ultimately to me was like, well, what can we do with this shed to turn it into something? And Michigan in general, it was a fairly lax zoning environment for most things. And we ended up turning it into the shed into a little tiny house. We saw all these tiny house things, and we rented out the tiny house on Airbnb, and we had the main cottage on Airbnb as well, and started kind of seeing what, people love the water, people love to get away. And that kind of was like where I dipped my toe into hospitality as a whole. And then right as I graduated, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And a friend of mine was moving out to Arizona, and he was like, hey, you want to come out here and check it out? So we went out to the Grand Canyon, and we stayed in a yurt about 40 minutes or so, half hour or so from the Grand Canyon. And I was like, well, this is a really cool experience. And it was like $200 for us to stay in this place. And we were like, we could easily create this thing. This is nothing that's super crazy to build. So we started looking for land out by the Grand Canyon, and we bought a 1 acre parcel, and then found out that we had a really big draw out there, and bought another 10-acre parcel, and then developed 15 units of glamping domes, glamping yurts, everything that you can think of on the put up and put down kind of units that for seasonal hospitality, and we started creating cool outdoor spaces for people to hang out. And I tell you what, building in the desert and building on mountains teaches you a lot very quickly, and that's helped us be able to do a lot of other things in Ohio and Michigan and in areas that it's a lot easier to build in. So that's kind of how I got into outdoor hospitality. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll just chime in. You know, I'm part of I'm part of a group of three friends who are connected to Joe initially through a family relationship, and we heard that about the cool stuff that Joe was doing out west and in Michigan and Ohio, and just got to know Joe, recognized that he's a really entrepreneurial go-getter, and we said, hey, we want to do something with you. We want to do something. Is there a project that we could do together that you couldn't do on your own? And Joe, being Joe, said, well, as a matter of fact, I have kind of a wild idea. And when he told us about it, we got really excited, and that's how we ultimately got involved.
Wow, you guys were crazy enough to jump on the journey. I love it. And so, where are you both based out of?
So I'm in Sandusky, Ohio, which is where our Soul Stay location is.
Yeah, and I'm in San Francisco. So I get out to Soul Stay probably 3 times a year, and when we were in the development stages, a little bit more than that.
Okay. And Joe, did you is your Arizona projects, are those still going on? Are those still operating? Or and like were you living there at the time?
So Connor, one of my best friends from preschool, basically the
Must
guy
be a
that
good guy.
moved out there. Yeah. The guy that moved out there initially, he ran the property and everything out there as I was kind of building out some of our locations in Michigan. And then we about a year and a half ago were like, hey, we want to kind of bring everything to the Midwest and make that kind of more of our identity for a little while and build. There's not a ton of glamping around the Midwest, and we were like, hey, let's lean into closer proximity to us. And he moved back. We sold our locations out west. We actually had one in 29 Palms as well. We sold that location. Um, and we sold the Arizona location, and we had a couple other properties out west. So we sold all of those and have just been basically investing around the Lake Erie Islands region, which is kind of where I'm living now. So
Yeah. How do you feel about that decision now that you've been into it a couple years? First, leaving West, coming home, putting it around one location. Like, yeah, how I imagine there's a lot of consideration that goes into that. And looking back now, what are your thoughts?
I think it was probably the best decision that we made because we basically were able to lean in a lot more on creating the most quality experience we could possible instead of just creating an experience. And we kind of learned that even more here at Soulstay while we were testing different houseboat options and things like that. Um, Being able to be in close proximity with your units, you're able to kind of have the most impact on them, see what guests are saying, but like actually feel what guests are saying, and be able to continue to keep improving and iterating faster instead of, hey, we saw this, let's take a trip out there in 2 weeks and then let's do something else and then let's come back and then, hey, let's take a trip out there and then come back. It's, hey, we saw this yesterday and 2 days later we're implementing a solution to it to make it even better. So
Yeah, and I just pile on to that. I think what we found intriguing from a business standpoint is there was, to Joe's point, a lot of opportunity, untapped opportunity in the Midwest, which is unlike the West because you've got a lot of bigger outfits that are all doing some version of the same thing, locating near a big national park or other landmark, and then competing with one another to offer some version of a high-end glamping experience outside the park boundaries. And you know, this is a little bit different. We're looking for big, attractive markets, but not necessarily national parks. The Great Lakes are prime candidates. Sandusky's really interesting because of because of all the amenities in and around the area. There are, if I'm not mistaken, 13 million visitors to the Sandusky area alone every year, which makes it a particularly attractive market. But you see microcosms of Sandusky all around the Midwest, particularly around the Great Lakes.
I love it. I mean, you have so many things going for you that are unique. Obviously they're on water units, right? Super, super unique. You have a floating sauna, which is even more unique. You're in the Midwest with very low competition. And then you're also in an urban area, which is very rare for most, unique and outdoor hospitality operators as well. So like you guys are kind of a unicorn in many ways. So tell me a little bit about how Soul Stay started. Like, did you find this property and then it was created, or were you looking at a bunch of different things first? And yeah, like how did this property and the business come to be? What was that journey like?
Yeah, so I started buying just like single family homes and duplexes around Lake Erie because I moved to this area and was trying to kind of figure out how to grow the business, basically all of the things that I'm involved in. And I told the realtor that I was working with, like, hey man, I really don't love Ohio that much, but my family's here. So how can you help me find a location that's either like a campground or a marina that we can bring some of the stuff that we're doing out west to the Midwest? And then that's kind of where it started. And he ended up um, selling a home for a gentleman who owned a marina and was looking at selling it, and it was a little bit distressed, and had been in their family for a while, and that's when the dots just kind of started to connect, and we came along and saw the property, and I was like, this is ugly, but it's pretty, and let's have some fun with it. So
Wow. Okay. And then was that at that point you see this dock and that's when you call up Bill and the gang?
yeah, it was a long process of buying this marina. It's really, the financing side of a property that is $1 million that is only generating $25,000 in revenue is basically, you go to a bank and that's like suicide. You're not, no bank is going to lend you money very easily, and unless you're going to put up a lot of collateral on other things. So then it kind of became more of a, hey, how do we figure out a way to make this thing come to life? And then I started talking to Ray, one of the other partners, about this opportunity, and he brought it up to their group, and then they came out and we all toured it together, and they were like, hey, like let's do this. Let's make it happen.
Wow. So I want to make sure I understand your numbers correctly. So the purchase price of the distressed marina was $1 million, and at the time it was only doing 25,000 in revenue.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. And then how many? So it was 1 acre of property on the land, and then probably more on the water. Or how many slips on the dock in the water?
So it's permitted for 62 slips. It had a boat launch. It had three land units on the property, but none of that was really being tapped into that much. And the docks they needed a lot of repair, so they weren't really 62 rentable slips. Although it was, they were usable in the permitting space, because in, I think, 1976 they were permitted, or 1978 they were permitted, so they're probably not upgraded much since then.
Hmm.
So we came in, and that's where it started.
Wow. Was there gasoline? Was there a fuel pump there or no?
No, there wasn't. There's a marina that's just across the bay from us that has fuel, so we kind of toyed with the thought of, what it would look like to add fuel to our marina, but as far as like the short term right now, it doesn't make sense to add it as a revenue stream. But there's a lot of things that you can add as micro revenue streams across this property.
So when you were looking to purchase this thing for $1 million that was doing 25,000 in revenue, that math doesn't math very well. So like what ended up being your business plan for that, and of which I assume you took to Bill, and like, yeah, maybe what did it start as and how did it iterate? And just tell us about that process.
Yeah, so initially we looked at it as a marina, but the houseboat concept, and we initially wanted to build these houseboats out on pontoon bases, make them no frills, basically like an economical glamping experience, but cute, Instagrammable, and replicable in a way that we could build more of them. So we started out like that, and I brought to them the idea of, hey, we could start with 5, but we want to get to 10. So we'd be at 8 units, 3 units on land, 5 units on water, and we would get to 10, so we'd be at 13 units total. We found out very quickly after we started building them that we could probably make the units better by investing a little bit more into the units, and that's kind of, I guess, more of a story down the line that we can talk a little bit more about. But we also knew, after, even if we put 10 boats in the water, we still have 52 potential slips, right? As far as the revenue opportunity goes, so we can increase dock prices than they currently were at. We have a 80-foot long storage building, so we can do indoor boat storage. And then there's a ramp that is a pay per use ramp. So then there's additional revenue there. And there was a general store on the property that used to be a bait shop that was closed down. His grandmother used to run it as a bait shop, and then once she had left, they stopped running it as a bait shop. It was basically just used as a storage room, and so that was another area where we're like, well, we could turn that back into a store, have some amenities basically rented out of there, have, basically grab and go snacks, candies, things like that, drinks, and another face for people to see. And that's all those different lines of revenue kind of came together, and that was the plan that we presented to them.
How much of a state of disrepair was the docks and any other areas of the property where it was like, all right, in order to start renting, and maybe just for the listeners who aren't familiar with boat life and docks, but basically, people will pay monthly or annually to store their boat at a dock so they don't have to trailer it and bring it home and put it in a garage or storage every time they want to use it. So they'll pay monthly or annually on a slip to store their boat there, so then they can just go to the dock and jump in and use it when they would like. And yeah, you could take it from there.
And one of the things that I'll add is that sometimes people will store their boat or store their trailer and get disinterested in being on the water, and all of a sudden your marina starts to accumulate a lot of stuff that very quickly becomes junk. So what we acquired was a commercial marina that had not had any meaningful capital investment or capital improvements probably over the prior 40 to 50 years. So it was in a pretty significant state of disrepair. The cottages, or the units on the property that we turned into cottages, needed meaningful investment. The bait shop needed a meaningful investment to be converted into a sundry shop and check-in desk. The marina itself was, just it looked like a junkyard. There were a lot of rusted out trailers,
and
etc. There were some boats that people had just decided to leave and forget about. And so there was a lot of work and a lot of capital that needed to be invested. The docks, as Joe described, needed a lot of improvement. We needed to bring power down to the dock. We wanted to make sure that the docks were were safe for guests, and were operable for the units that we were anticipating to put in. And then ultimately we had to pay for the construction of the units as well.
Hello, listeners. This is Sherry Halala, founder of Sage Outdoor Advisory. If you're launching an outdoor hospitality project like glamping, we can help. We offer feasibility studies and appraisals. What that means is we look at your specific market and proposed business offering and complete an in-depth analysis to make sure that your planned business will be profitable. Getting a second opinion on your proposal and forecasted financials is critical to understand before you spend years of your time and hundreds of thousands of dollars. This is particularly important if you are looking to raise money for your project from a bank or private investors. They are going to want to see this type of deep dive analysis from an independent third-party specialist in the industry. We at Sage have completed well over 250 feasibility studies and appraisals in outdoor hospitality in North America in the last 4 years. So we understand what it takes to bring a project from concept to reality. If this sounds like it could be helpful to you, you can go to our website, sageoutdooradvisory.com, and schedule a call with our team. While you're there, check out our proprietary glamping database map too. Thanks. Now back to the show.
So, Bill, it's so valuable to have you here as an investor perspective because so many entrepreneurs are raising money, and raising money is so difficult, particularly, to go convince someone to put their cash into this, dream. And what, how are you looking at this and approaching this when Joe brings you this, somewhat of kind of a Frankenstein of a deal with a, Cinderella type vision where it's like, we've got a dock that's needs a lot of repairs in a bait shop and there's junk everywhere, but this could be, it's going to take a lot of work, but like this could be awesome. Like what's going through your head and how are you looking at this as an investor?
Well, I think the first thing I'd say is that Joe came to a receptive audience. We, like Joe, had spent a lot of time around the glamping industry and understood and saw the massive growth that was taking place. And of course, me being in California, you see it everywhere with companies like Under Canvas and Auto Camp. But no one's more successful, or very few are more successful than what the company formerly known as Getaway, and they had a lot of facilities in the Midwest, and so we were quickly able to understand that the glamping opportunity was not just a coastal opportunity, that there was meaningful growth opportunities in the Midwest. We liked that market. We loved the property and Joe's vision, and Joe also I had identified a property at a very, very attractive price. So we felt like that we had a very good margin of safety, and the business opportunity appeared to be meaningful, given what we wanted to start with and what we felt we could grow into, given the size of the property, the docks, the number of slips, et cetera.
Thank you. And you started off by saying, we trust Joe and we like Joe. And I was just curious, like as an investor, what is it about your experience with him that made you think, hey, my money's safe with this guy. It's in good hands.
Oh gosh. I mean, his track record, Joe's been doing this, since his, you could argue since high school, but certainly since his college days. And he's been a successful entrepreneur in real estate, for longer than probably just about anybody else his age. And I think that gave us a lot of confidence. His knowledge of both the glamping business and the market in and around the Sandusky area, and I would say more broadly in and around the Midwest, with a particular emphasis on the lakeside properties. He's a very good real estate investor and a good operator and a great entrepreneur. So I think that, in concert with the fact that we got to know Joe over the long, arduous process of acquiring the property. So I think all of that gave us the level of confidence that we needed to move ahead with the investment.
Thank you. And so what happens next, Joe? Like, what else did you guys need to do You mentioned there's renovations on the bait shop, the 3 units on land, the dock, building the initial 5 floating saunas. Is there anything else that you had to do before, getting open for launch? And then also, how was the permitting process too? Because, an overnight lodging unit at a commercial marina, I'm sure probably wasn't in whatever permit was there before. So what was that process like?
So it's interesting you say that. So obviously, like cosmetically, it was a very, very ugly property, but most of what we did was cosmetic to this property. I mean, dock repairs, cosmetic things. There weren't really a ton of permit type of repairs that were being done. We're sanding these things down, and we're putting a new epoxy coat on them. We're texturing them. We're taking all these rusted posts. We're putting new posts in. We're putting new post sleeves on. We're putting LED lighting along the docks to make them safer. Um, so as far as all of that, the cosmetic stuff went, the permitting side was super simple. There really wasn't a ton. When it came to the lodging side, because we were doing boats, the city basically said, well, because it's a boat, we don't really touch that space. And that's that's the Department of Natural Resources. That's their thing because it's in the water. We don't mess with the water. They mess with the water. And then we reached out to the um, Department of Natural Resources, and they basically said, "Hey, as long as your boats are registered, that's what you're supposed to do. And you're a marina. You're renting the boats as a marina would be able to." And they essentially said because of that, as long as our boats are registered and the and we're making sure that the people that we're renting to are essentially safe. There was no real permit on the actual boat unit side, which is kind of a neat concept when it comes to like speed of getting a property ready because the marina was already a marina since the 1970s. We were grandfathered in a lot of ways to getting this open in a lot faster uh, I guess, timeline to start proving if this concept was going to work or not work. Instead of it being just a vacant piece of land that we've got to go through zoning hearings, we've got to go through all these different um, regulatory pieces to get the puzzle to even see if it's going to be accepted. When we opened up, it was really getting all these dots together, and then we were talking to the city, we were talking to economic development throughout the process, and they were really buying into this concept of, hey, this property had a $25,000 economic impact to the area, and we were selling them on, hey, we think it can have $500,000 or more in economic impact. So do you guys trust us? And they really bought into that, and it really the way that we did a lot of the build out um, really saved us a lot of headache on that side.
Good. I'm super glad that it worked out that way for you. I know we've done a couple marina and dock projects in the past where it's just nope, no lodging allowed, craft only. So that's awesome that the department you were working with was willing to work with you and just said, yeah, you're good to go. So
Yeah, they were super receptive, and they wanted to see the part of town that we're in. It's kind of in like a revitalization stage. Just like our neighbor is essentially like a new waterfront restaurant, and it was being built at the same time that we purchased this marina, and they were basically like, "Oh my, like there people actually care about the waterfront on this side." So to us, us coming in and then this other uh, gentleman that was entrepreneur coming in saying, "Hey, we want to make this area something again." The city was completely on board of how do we support these businesses, even to the point where one of the local tourism boards actually gave us a grant toward making to putting a huge mural in our property right when you're pulling in, to just add to the basically like beautification process outward and inward. So
tell us about the murals. I remember you guys telling us about that, and I was excited to see it come to life. It looks great. So tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, that's a cool story. I'll tell you about the mural that Joe mentioned. there's an artist from Venice Beach, California, by the name of Jules Muck. And Jules is originally from the UK, grew up as a graffiti artist in her teens, ultimately moved to New York City, and as graffiti artists do, was arrested for her graffiti art in New York City, and and ultimately ended up out on the West Coast, but has made a living putting up murals around the country and arguably, around the world, certainly. But most notably in and around LA and Venice Beach. But funny enough, she's done a lot of work in the Midwest. And one of our partners is in Indianapolis and is walking distance from the Broad Ripple Flower Alley, which is a series of garages in a kind of a classic downtown neighborhood in Indianapolis, where Jules was commissioned to basically do a series of garage doors that she transformed into a vibrant alley of garden murals. And it's really a pretty place to walk down in the summertime. And so our partner walked through this and said, "Hey, what's the story with this artist?" We reached out to her and we said, "Hey, how would you feel about coming out and doing something on an 80-foot building?" And we gave her some images of the area, and we were focused on the natural beauty of Sandusky, with particular regard to the lake. And she came out over the course of one of her trips out east and spent how many hours was she out doing that mural, Joe?
I mean, it was crazy how fast she moved. I mean, 80 foot by like 20 some foot tall building. I don't think she was, I think she was done in less than 8 hours.
Yeah, it was amazing.
What?
She arrived in the morning. She took out her all her spray cans, and we had gotten her a hydraulic lift because she obviously couldn't reach the top of the building. So we got her a hydraulic lift, and with her paint and her hydraulic lift, she got to work probably around 11 a.m. or noon, and was done shortly after dusk.
Holy smokes, that is
And
crazy.
this isn't just like some graffiti, like, just something you see on a train car. This is a very detailed portrait of every element of Lake Erie that you could think of.
Is this the one with the cat willows and the fish jumping in the boat and the sunset over the
Yeah,
water? Yeah, it's
yeah,
very
it's
beautiful.
beautiful.
And it's got your logo in it. Yeah, yeah, super cool. She did this in 8 hours.
Yeah,
It was insane.
It looks great.
she's
What
a force of nature.
what did that cost you guys to do the mural?
Are we allowed to disclose? We
Or
may not be allowed
oh,
to.
okay.
I think we negotiated beneficial terms
Okay.
that
Gotcha.
we ended up doing other projects with her afterwards as well. She even did a mural on a motel that we have in northern Michigan. She did a mural on a location we had in the 29 Palms area. She's done a lot of stuff for us, and it's been great.
It's been priceless. Yeah, it's been, it's inevitably guests that come, when they arrive or when they depart, they take pictures in front of the mural. Everybody asks about the mural. It's really eye-catching. You can see it's the first thing you see when you come onto the property, and it really does encapsulate the natural beauty of Lake Erie, in Sandusky.
Mm-hmm. And it's unique. It's, no one else is going to have that mural, right? You can't go buy that piece. It's not like a piece of furniture that you can just go buy or a unit that you can go buy. It's that is only at your guys' property, which is super cool. And you were saying the city gave you a grant to even help pay for that.
Yeah, so there, the Shores and Islands area, it's a tourism board that is in this region, and they basically invest in tourism related businesses to make an economic impact and beautify the area. And if it's signage, it's murals, it's lighting, it's they even have invested in like a pedal bike in the downtown area. They basically want to help businesses be prettier, and and that's kind of what they're all about. And especially if you have it, if it's outward facing in any way toward the community, they love that part and want to help make that come to life.
I wish every city would do that.
Well, the other thing I'd add to that is I got to give credit where credit is due. Joe did a phenomenal job of working with the city and of all of the vested interest groups that would have a say over what we could and couldn't do. And so, you know, we as the investor group would regularly fly out in the early stages of the project for 2 or 3 days, which would be taken up by, you know, visits to the property by city officials, regulatory representatives, et cetera, in order to incorporate them into our process and to make them stakeholders in what we were doing. And I give Joe a lot of credit because, you know, we would show up, but it was showing up after Joe had had invested considerable time and energy building relationships with these people.
Joe, any advice for folks navigating regulatory bodies, tourism boards, any lessons learned?
I think painting the picture and showing that you're human is the biggest thing right off the rip. Because if you can paint the picture to them and show that, hey, look, I'm not trying to do anything that's going to negatively impact the area. I'm doing something that's going to positively impact the area. And I want to know your opinion on how you'd like to see it done. And when you come to it, when you come at that angle from the beginning, they immediately want to just kind of throw out their opinion. And as long as you in some way are you just have to be receptive to that and know, hey, you're probably going to have to implement their opinion into what you're doing. But as long as you go into it with that in mind, there's a million and one ways that you can implement their opinion and still make the project your project.
And they're probably not going to say anything crazy like, "Hey, build a floating sauna."
No, no. It's usually super simple stuff like make sure that there's fire extinguishers in the boats. Make sure that there's smoke detectors in the boat. Like it's not anything that you wouldn't have wanted to have in there in the first place, right? But it's those things, just having the conversations with them ahead of time so that they're already kind of in the loop and they're kind of excited about the project and they want to see it come to life instead of them want to be like, oh, hey, we don't like these, people that are just coming in and throwing this stuff in the water and, making a mockery or making a scene or making, having parties or something that they don't know what you're doing if they don't know you, right? So if you go to them first and start bringing all of these things to their attention, they're ready to have that conversation with you. If you don't have that conversation with them and then they hear from somebody else that you guys are throwing a rave, even if you didn't throw a rave, they think that that's what you do there. Even though you're a hospitality glamping operation that creates basically couples getaways, they think that you have raves because that's what you would tell people, right? That's what somehow they've heard. But if you're the face that they've heard and they've heard it exactly from you, you've painted the picture to them, then they're buying into you and they're buying into the concept, and it makes it so much more fun. Honestly, it makes it less painstaking and it makes it more about just having a conversation as people and making the world a better place.
I love it. I love it. Well, good for you for going through that process. So you get the permitting, you have the initial vision. So what was the first year or so like? Because I think you operated for a year and then you're like, all right, we want to invest and do more, right? So what was that first year like?
So we learned a lot the first year. We like we were saying, we built the first few houseboats on pontoon bases. People loved it. We had a lot of great feedback, a lot of people that had a great time. But what we did learn from that first year was that, pontoon boats are boats, right? And they're some of the, they sway quite a bit. And although people know that they're, signing up for a houseboat experience, um, some, I would say a good majority of the guests that we have aren't regularly, going out on the boat, right? So they're not exactly expecting the movement of a boat when they come. They're expecting something that has just a little bit of movement, maybe like a waterbed. So we, from the beginning, started learning, hey, we need to figure out ways to make these boats move very minimally. And we started kind of iterating and iterating and iterating. And then after that first season, we went to the drawing board and said, hey, we made kind of like a proof of concept, but we want to go and make this a luxury experience. We don't want to just make it an experience. So let's lean into this. Let's invest into actually making this something that's um, it, it was considerably more expensive to build each unit, but it was considerably a better experience for the guests. And so we started the drawing board again. I guess we went back to the drawing board, and um, Bill and I kind of played back and forth on drawing up new designs and things like that. And then we went to a reputable builder that builds out docks in the area, and started talking to them about building like a truss frame system, and using dock blocks and things like that to build out a very, very stable unit. And the whole second process of us um, building out these Lux houseboats came to life. I know I kind of spewed into a million different things right there, but that it's exciting, so I get excited.
So, Bill, what were you thinking when you had the first year under your belt? I mean, maybe I don't know if you guys can share like what kind of rates and occupancies you were getting, and what are you thinking when Joe comes and says, "Hey, let's double down."
Well, I think as Joe said, year one established proof of concept for us. So we learned that that seasonally, call it March through November, we had people who were interested in staying in houseboats and liked coming to our property. What Joe didn't say is he did a phenomenal job of beautifying the property. We put a beautiful boardwalk in. We put in a bunch of amenities, and when you drove into the property, you actually had a very visually appealing property, not least of which was this gorgeous view of the bay right off of Lake Erie and Cedar Point off into the distance. And so the proof of concept, in terms of revenue and profitability, convinced us that this was working. And then the feedback that we'd gotten from guests also convinced us that we needed to consider going upscale. And finally, I would say that, as we engaged Sage to look at the property and give us an honest assessment. And I do remember that one of the results that really stuck with me, one of the results of your report, or one of the outcomes, was the notion that we could get somewhere in the range of $75 to $150 of additional capital per night by adding a restroom in each of the units. And so I think we realized that, to Joe's point, we wanted a floating experience, but people didn't like this notion of rocking the boat, and so we were able to stabilize it. We made we designed a slightly bigger unit, and we incorporated a bathroom in it. And I think all of that was based on the fact that we made money in the first year. We proved out that the concept worked, and the feedback we got from guests was they would pay more for a bigger, more luxurious unit. So there was really little discussion, not a lot of debate and consternation over building, these second generation units.
What I guess first off, your new units are beautiful. So I would say, for the listeners, the older units, were small on pontoons, colorful, kind of like, rustic charm, but they don't scream luxury. The new boats, they look like the modern cabins you'd see, kind of like a getaway or like a Scandinavian with the dark accents and really nice wood, big windows. So they're pretty sexy. Um, what what did it look like for a cost difference for you guys to build, the first ones compared to the second ones, and then how's that playing out for you in terms of revenue?
So, um, surprisingly, we were able to build our initial units for um, roughly like $10,000 or so a unit, which
Wow.
is fairly
What?
fairly minimal when it comes to building a glamping unit. Obviously, they were no frills. They were we were building them. We had our own on crew building them out, and that helped us keep the costs down. But we we made them cute. We didn't make them perfect, and that helped us lean in more on the second units. On, hey, we want to make these perfect, so let's make them better and better. So the second units cost us a little bit closer to $50,000 to build per unit, um, which obviously they're over two times the size. They're taller. They have, heat, AC. They have TVs. They have high speed internet. They have a lot of things there. They have a small kitchenette space, the restroom, a little seating area, a little porch. There's a lot more elements to them, and just from the beginning of contracting out the dock bases, basically for the frame base of the boat, um, we we obviously invested a lot more capital in the beginning part, but the, I guess, cash on cash return comparison in the short term was fairly similar, I would say. But the long term longevity of these other units, we can already see that they're going to be um, way more durable, um, way more Instagrammable, I guess you could say. And the experience overall is, because it's a lot more of a luxury experience, we're getting double, if not a little bit more times, like 2.5 times the amount that we were getting the year before. So it's a little bit of a climb to start getting there, but not only were we seeing, two times the amount per night, but we're seeing higher occupancy rates. We don't really have hardly any open weekends that ever come, which is a really good thing for us. So I think it was well worth the investment.
Yeah, that's what I would have expected. And yeah, obviously, a 5x investment, and maybe in the first you might reach a quicker payout on your, or break even on the unit cost with the smaller one, but every year after that, after payout, you're making so much more per site. And you guys have high density, high value acreage, right? So every site matters, and you want to have as good of an income producing unit on that you can fit in as possible. So I love that. And what are your guys' thoughts? Is there more planned for the other slips? Like, are you going to add more houseboats? What does the future look like in that regard?
Yeah, I mean, I think, given the success of the kind of the second generation houseboats, certainly our intention is to phase out the all of the first generation boats and replace them. And I would say comfortably, we could, we probably see the ability to put over 20 of these on the property. And so I think that's our near term objective, is moving toward a, kind of a 20 unit luxury houseboat property, and then continuing to upgrade the rest of the property alongside of it. We've done most of that, certainly, but we continue to think about creative ways to add value, at least add value in the eyes of of our guests. So we loved the floating sauna idea. That really helped us out, and that's really set us apart. And we're doing other things along those lines that we hope will draw guests and certainly enhance guest stay and give them memories that will bring them coming back and will have them referring others to come visit us.
I love it. Is the 20 number, is that capped by demand, or is that capped by the permitting? Because you have, what is it, 60 boat sites? How do you weigh that using something to, someone rents a site for their boat or putting a houseboat there? Like, how do you weigh that?
The main concern, I guess, would be parking in the short term. I mean, if we're able to acquire more land in proximity that we could accommodate more parking to be able to have more units, then that would be great. I mean, a traditional marina that's 62 slips, you don't have 62 people that are ever really there at the same time, even if you have 62 boats in the water. Versus with our concept, if you were to have 62 units in the water, you'd have 62 potential cars in the parking lot at once, and that's a lot of parking that you have to come up with. And so that was actually one of our biggest things with the city, was how are we going to park these people? And so that's something that we have to, if we want to get beyond that 20 number, we would have to figure out how we're going to, come up with more land to create more parking.
That is so interesting. It's probably the first time parking has come up as a constraint, and I guess it makes sense because you're in an urban area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So therein lies the problem.
Yeah.
That's super interesting, though. Well, hopefully you guys. It'd be super cool if you had a chance to expand and get more land to accommodate that. I mean, I'd love to see 60 of these things, out
It'd be
there.
pretty cool.
What I want to incept an idea and throw something out, and how I think it would be pretty incredible to see one of Posh Outdoors' mirror cabins on one of your guys' floating sites. I think that'd be pretty awesome. So I just wanted to throw that out there as a collaboration idea because I think that'd be great.
That'd be pretty
Something
neat.
we definitely love to consider. That'd be very cool.
And is it in the possibility that your guys' units could have rooftop decks that people could go up to? Is that possible?
So build possibility, yes. Insurance possibility, insurance in general, with a marina, there's a lot of risks associated with, docks, water, things like that. So our insurance company that we currently work with doesn't really want us to have anything on rooftops, but if we could find a provider that would want to do something like that, then maybe that could be a potential down the road.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. And anything else? And then you guys also built a rooftop hot tub, correct?
We
Yeah.
did.
Can you guys tell me about that? Because that sounds pretty good too.
So right off the edge of our boardwalk, basically we there was an old rental building that they used for, I think, like airboat rentals at one point, that the gentleman we purchased the property from used to just lease this building out. And it really didn't have a ton of use to us. So we kind of played around with the concept of ripping the roof off of it and putting a flat roof. So we ripped the roof off, put a flat roof, and added steps up, and then a railing all the way around it. And we had a neighbor with an excavator lift the hot tub up and set it on the rooftop. It was quite an experience putting that together. But honestly, like, again, with the amenities, having like the best views, the rooftop hot tub, I mean, you can see everything. It's actually kind of funny too, because we even have like people that are fishermen and duck hunters that'll come out sometimes, that'll stay with us, and they even like to go up in the hot tub and just hang out and look for the ducks across the bay, so they know where they're going to go hunt the next day. But it's a beautiful view. You get some crazy, amazing sunsets there, and again, just adding some of those amenities in places where you have the best views is it creates the best experiences.
I love how it's just like everything's possible for you guys. You know, these all these crazy ideas. You're like, all right, mural, let's do it. All right, a floating sauna, let's do it. A rooftop hot tub, why not? Like, we'll make it happen. We'll find a way. So that is very cool.
Well, new in 2025 is another addition that again Joe gets credit for. We acquired a 50-year-old kind of Lake Erie classic watercraft. So if you think about the classic watercrafts in the U.S., you might come up with Chris Craft, or if you come out to if you're familiar with the Lake Tahoe area, there's an old boat company called Garwood, and Garwood made an old beautiful wooden boat. Well, the Lake Erie version of that is called a Lyman, and Lyman, in fact, was manufactured in a facility that's probably only about a half mile from our property. We acquired a 50-year-old Lyman, which was the second to last fiberglass version of their classic craft, built before the factory closed, and spent the winter refurbishing it, and it is absolutely beautiful. And we're going to offer guests sunset cruises on the Lyman, where we sit on a beautiful protected bay that is pretty it's a pretty big size. It's probably a mile or so long and probably a half mile or so wide. But it's a lovely place to see the sunset and tour the shores of Sandusky and Cedar Point. So we're really excited to see how that works this summer.
Wow, visionaries! That is incredible. Good for you guys. No one's doing that, right? I assume. No one else is offering those types of boat tours.
No, and the cool thing too is it's red, white, and blue. So, it's pure America, which is it's just kind of a neat thing, being on the lake in the summertime, and it's built in Ohio, and it just kind of it wraps it all together even more.
Wow. So you guys are in a high visibility, high demand area where people are coming to a place where they have a need for hospitality. So your location has a lot of built-in demand, but I'm curious to know, what have you guys been doing in terms of marketing and advertising to get the word out about your property, and what's maybe been the biggest success for you, and what's maybe been a flop?
So when we were first building everything out, we just kind of started blasting it out to a lot of blasting out emails and things to like news stations that were local, newspapers, magazines, and stuff, to just try to see if anyone would pick up a story and come out and see what we were talking about, because everyone was intrigued by the intro, but they didn't really know. Like it's confusing, right? You say like, hey, there's this cool houseboat marina with these tiny houseboats floating on Lake Erie, and they're like, what? And then they had to come see it in person. So that was a really cool thing for us, getting some kind of like free publicity at the beginning. And one of the other things, obviously, our social media being up to 28,000 followers, we've really leaned into that quite a bit, through using social media influencers, continuing to do different promotional things through our social media to gain a lot more traffic. We do some small paid ads and things as well. We even do an Instagram or influencer event at our property to bring basically like Ohio, Indiana, Pennsylvania, like our local region influencers. If there's somebody that has like a following of 30 or 40,000 or more in that region, and we just start reaching out to them, and we try to have them come to this event. We put on a great show, I guess you could say. We have lots of other local businesses partner with us in the event, and it creates a ton of publicity for us. And most of them come out, and it doesn't cost us any money. It's just a trade for the stay itself. Obviously, we pay for the food and drinks and things like that we have for them, but it's a really cool way that we've been able to get a ton of traffic um, from being able to not spend a ton on like the advertisement side. We've even had a few videos of our own hit 1 or 2 million views. We've had multiple influencers that have had 1 or 2 million views on their videos. It's been pretty cool seeing how social media can affect a small business like ours and help us elevate.
That's that's great. And then were the influencers, this was a one-time event where a bunch of them came out, or it's just ongoing, we trade you a room for this, the food and the drink and all the good stuff.
We do both. So we have ongoing where we'll do like, one influencer comes out and it's their private time that we get to curate the experience for them, and then they basically are just a guest on the property and they do their thing. But then we also put on an event once a year where it's for influencers, it's for creators and collaborators to come together, meet each other. And we had a speaker come out last year and talk about personal brand and help them develop their personal brand, but also we made it about how they could also get involved in the area. So it was beneficial to all of the local businesses in the area, to be able to see you know all this traction to them from influencers in all kind of walks of life, mom influencers, travel influencers, um, people that have followings from like being bakers, things in general that just come together into this event, and it helped us a ton last year, and we have it again this year, and we're super excited to put that on because we have the space to do it, so why not offer that up as an opportunity?
Wow. And such a smart strategy to be focused on regional people. That's super important, I think maybe you guys are getting to the point where you'll be a fly-in destination soon. I think you guys are definitely, getting there in terms of the elevated luxury experience on the property. But I would imagine most people are driving in, so like making sure that your influences are high impact by their audience being local as well is very important. Um, and that is super helpful. So what's next for Soulstay and for the brand and for you guys?
Um, well, we've got all these new things that are hitting the water this year, so that's going to be really cool. Um, we want to build out more units, as Bill had said, and I mean maybe a Soul Stay too at some point once we solidify. But right now we want to just continue to keep making the experience better here, and keep our eyes open for more and more opportunities. We're always open to opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I think clearly the water and the floating homes is a real unique characteristic of Solstay. But I think the other thing that Solstay has tapped into is this idea of bringing glamping to urban destinations. And so um, I think that to the extent that we could find another unique opportunity to do an urban glamping site, we would probably be really excited about it.
I love it. And I think there's a big need for that. And I think it's gonna, it's more upfront costs, right? But well, sometimes not necessarily. But you just have so much demand, you have so much exposure, you have so much need. It's a lot less risky. It's a lot less risky.
Yeah, I mean the big challenge we had was convincing ourselves first and foremost whether people would go for it. I mean, people come to the area for music festivals, for Ironman events, for amusement park, etc. And they're used to staying at a chain, a mid-tier chain hotel. And the question is, is there some cohort that is willing to embrace the outdoors in a glamping experience? And I think the answer we found is absolutely. And so I think we're convinced of that, and I think we've got our eyes open and are anxiously kind of plotting the next chapter.
Does Soul Stay 2 have to be on water or can it be on land?
Yeah, I don't think it needs to be on water. What do you think, Joe?
I mean, it'd be really cool if it was on water, but I don't think it's not a requirement. I think the nature experience is basically the biggest thing. And having some sort of water feature or water element in it, I think is definitely an added value. Um, but we'll see. I think there's a lot of beautiful pieces of property that are just needing to be part of Soul Stay.
It's a good thing we didn't include the word float in our name.
Yeah.
Why is that? Why is that? Oh, right. Yeah, gotcha. I hear you. Oh, how did you come up with Soul Stay? I was meaning to ask that.
I forget. We I think we threw like 50 names out there at the beginning, and we started asking people to help us vote on them and things like that. And then eventually we were just like throwing, name after name after name. And then I think we were in a call, and I said maybe we could call it Soul Stay, like, Del Sol, like the sun god, but you're staying with us and you're having an experience. And everyone's kind of just like, oh yeah, no, that actually would be kind of cool. And then we started to eventually just like embrace it, and it kind of worked out. So
That's super funny that you had 50 names. How many times did you do a name and then Google it and you're like, someone's already done it? Like, oh, it's already taken.
There
Oh.
were a lot of those. Yeah, there were definitely a lot of those. Yeah.
When we did that exercise for Sandy Vans, I always tell people like Sandy Vans was like our 108th name choice.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I think we all love it now. And it's probably not the best van name. I think it's got some good parts and some bad parts to it. It doesn't exactly like conjure luxury and like a premium feel, but I think I think we've overcome that, and it does capture the ethos of San Diego, which is what we were trying to do. So,
There you go.
any other like lessons learned or things you'd want to share from the launch, from the operations, yeah, that I haven't asked.
Well, one thing I'd say is that Joe had a lot of ideas, and I think when we were operating at our best, we didn't say no to most of them. And the reason I bring that up is because sometimes you just don't know what's going to work until you try it. And it's really easy to stop if you decide that something's not working and to change directions. And so we did a lot of things to see what would work and what didn't work. And I think that allowed us to end up with an experience and a property that is much better than it would have been if we had said no to a lot of things.
I wish more people had that attitude. There'd be a lot more cool stuff built. You got Joe, you found the coolest investors. And Bill, I think you found a pretty cool builder and entrepreneur as well.
Agreed.
Oh, Joe, anything that you wanted to share in terms of, lessons learned or questions I didn't ask or anything like that?
no, I think the thing I've kind of learned through even just like all of the hospitality things that I've been involved with now is, just continuing to invest in the experience over and over and making it better. Not even just accepting the fact that like, hey, we had 5-star reviews or we had 4.7 or whatever it might be. But how can we make it, better, and how can we make every guest's experience top notch, and how can we make every piece of our property better, and how, obviously, money is a factor in everything. You can only spend so much money, but how can you continue to make the experience side of things, even just on the free end, like making sure that your processes for your guests checking in are as smooth sailing as possible, and your staff is as friendly as possible, and they're saying consistent things with your brand, and then just over and over investing in like that part of the experience. Um, that's like the biggest thing that I'm trying to do across everything that I do, and that's it's not something that happens overnight by any means, but I would say that we're really seeing it start to pay off, and I think it's important to not like sleep on the fact that the experience that you're creating can always be better.
I love that attitude, and it's remarkable to see what you both have accomplished, in the 12 or 18 months since we did the study, and how much, you executed on and brought to life, and all the crazy things I didn't think necessarily you'd be able to figure out, and you did. So I'm super excited to check in the next 12 months and see what you guys have, and see how this project continues to evolve. And yeah, I love it. Do you guys have any asks of the audience, or if people wanted to get in touch with you about opportunities or anything, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you, or any asks?
We'd love for everyone to follow us on social media at Soul Stay Lodging. That'd be great. And if you check out our website this week, we have www.soulstaylodging.com, and you sign up for our email list, you'll get 10% off your first stay.
I'm doing it right now.
Do it.
And anything from you, Bill?
No, I'm good. I'm looking forward to seeing you in person at Soul Stay. Let me know when you book your stay, and we'll be out there to greet you.
Yeah, I for sure, and I will let you guys know. I'm gonna put it on my list. And then Bill, you live in San Francisco, right? All right, my brother lives in San Francisco, so I got to come down. So I'll let you
Excellent.
know if I end up in the city.
Excellent. Yeah, please do. Look forward to catching up in person.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks so much, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot,
Thanks for
Connor.
having us.
This is awesome.
Hello, friends. We've chosen to work with Double Take Media for the professional management, marketing, and advertising for our podcast. We recommend you check out their services to see if they're right for your launching business as well. You can learn more at doubletake.media. Thanks. Now back to the show.